Hello there. Good. It is night here. Where you are, it might be anything, including night. As you saw, this is a thoroughly amateur production. I am the cinematographer, the director, the producer, the best boy, the key grip. Name it. I don't have it, but I'm it. I am rebuilding my Whisky Basics playlist. I probably won't keep putting this in as the playlist rebuilds. There will be videos that people have seen so that they'll know. But this is like the fourth or fifth. I accidentally deleted the whole thing. Don't ask me how. I don't know how. The most surprised person in the history of the world was when, boom, the message came up on the screen that the playlist was deleted. I don't know how I did it. So I'm rebuilding it video by video. I found that it is not fun recording over again videos that I'd already done, even though I had intended to redo some of them, because as totally amateur as this is, they were worse. This is actually more or less acceptable. Anyway, the structure of the Whisky Basics playlist is that there's a question and I answer it. These are questions that I had when I was just getting started and couldn't find all the information in one place. When I was just starting this channel, however long ago it's been, a couple of years I believe, somebody said, well, that's just going to fill a niche. Well, yeah, that's my whole point. There's this niche that nobody else, as far as I've ever been able to determine, is even attempting to fill. Why not me, the inimitable Robert McKay? Or is it just that nobody wants to imitate me? Anyway, the question for this video is, what is straight whiskey? Now, everybody today talks about drinking whiskey neat. To me, neat is where everything's all straightened up, things are where they belong, they're not all scattered across the room. And what everybody calls drinking whiskey neat, I learned when I was young, even though I didn't drink then, to say is drinking it straight. But that's a whole nother deal. We have here a bottle of Knob Creek 9-year, a bourbon from Jim Beam. I love it to death. And it says here that it is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. What does it mean that it is straight whiskey? Well, let me pour some. Due to the way I set things up to record, it is easier for me to look over here at the screen and see the level in the glass than it is for me to try to see the level in the glass as I pour. So, I don't believe it. I'm sitting in the right place from the very beginning. I don't have to shift at all. But what does it mean that this is straight bourbon whiskey? What does it mean, for that matter, if you see that it is straight corn whiskey, or straight rye whiskey, or straight wheat whiskey? Well, this is a purely American designation. You won't find it on a bottle of Scotch. You won't find it on a bottle of Irish whiskey. You won't find it on Canadian or Japanese or Australian or any other whiskey. Only on whiskey from the United States. And how they come up with using the word straight for this beats me. It strikes me as a Southern thing. Because in the South, we sometimes use words in unique ways. For instance, if you go out in your backyard and you look at where you screw the hose on to water the grass, in the South, that's a hydrant. if you're driving down a country road and there's a ditch beside the road, that's a bar ditch. What else do we do with words that's interesting? And I'm not talking about invented words like Saigoglin, which you'll find in Appalachia, and it just means all crooked or out of plumb. It ain't straight. You know, that guy's character's all Saigoglin. You know right there he's as crooked as a snake. Don't trust him with nothing. But actual, already existing words in English, what else have we done with them? Well, nothing's coming to mind. But I think that this might have its roots in the South, but I have not looked it up. I don't propose to. I have intellectual curiosity. I like to know things just to know them. I like to learn things just because I don't know them. But there are limits. So what does it mean? First and foremost, you'll remember that this is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Smells good. You can only put that on a straight whiskey if it's actually made and aged and bottled in that state. Now this is from Jim Beam. Their distillery, if I remember right, is at Claremont, Kentucky. I know it's in Kentucky. I believe the town is Claremont. Clermont. And so they make it in Kentucky, they age it in Kentucky, they bottle it in Kentucky, so it's Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. If you have your operation in Kentucky, but you're getting your whiskey from MGP in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, you cannot call it Kentucky straight whiskey. There's some woodiness there, some honey, a little bit of smoke, kind of a floral component. And if you go back into my reviews, I believe I've reviewed Nom Creek 9-year, and you'll probably find that what I got then is not exactly what I'm getting now. From day to day, a whiskey may have the same basic characteristics, but you might get different things, and I'm getting a little bit different on the nose tonight. But the straight part, we've talked about whether it is or isn't Kentucky or whatever state straight whiskey. But the actual meaning of straight, first, it has to follow all the other rules. In this case, all the rules the government has set forth to be bourbon. Obviously, if you don't follow those rules, you can't call it bourbon. You know, you build your distillery 1 foot on the other side of the line into Canada, you can't call it bourbon. But 1 foot on this side, you can. You got to make it in the United States. In fact, if I remember correctly, and I don't script these things, I don't write out what I'm going to say, and I have a mind like a steel sieve, so sometimes I don't remember what I have done. But if I remember correctly, my previous video was on what is bourbon, what it takes to be bourbon. And I'm not going to go into it too deep here. This particular bottle cost me $29.99, 30 bucks. This stuff used to run me about $35, and worth it. Now, not everybody likes Knob Creek. Everybody's palate's different. But in my view, this is the best bottom of the line bourbon there is. And by a line, I mean what they call a vertical, not succession, progression, I don't remember, of things. Old Granddad starts off with, I believe it's 80 proof, then goes to the bonded, then goes to the 114. And they've recently come out with a 7-year bonded. You have Old Forester, they've got a 80 proof, they've got 100 proof, they've got various other bottles. There's Wild Turkey, they've got an 81 proof, a 101 proof, a rare breed. And the entry level, the bottom of the line, is whatever the lowest bottle in that is. The 81 Wild Turkey, for instance. This is the youngest at 9 years and the cheapest of all the Knob Creeks. It's the bottom of the line, and it is as good as some middle or top of the line bourbons. It's good stuff. But why is it straight bourbon? Yes, I remembered. Sometimes I'd forget where my nose is if I couldn't bash myself in it. Straight bourbon, since we're drinking bourbon, I'll go with that, and this applies to all other kinds of whiskey, must follow all the rules of bourbon, plus it must be at least 2 years old. If it's 1 year and 364 days when they dump the barrel, it is not straight bourbon. And it's worth noting, the age on the bottle, if there's an age statement, is the age of the youngest whiskey. There is 9-year-old whiskey in here. We know that. There might also be 10-year, 12-year. There might even be a barrel of 18-year-old whiskey in here, but the youngest is 9 years, therefore it's 9-year. If you have just one out of a batch of 1,000 barrels, just one that's under 2 years, you cannot call it straight whiskey. Honey, cinnamon, brown sugar, typical bourbon notes, but in their own unique balance, so that this is definitively Knob Creek and not anybody else's whiskey. So it has to be at least 2 years old. If it is at least 2 years old, but less than 4 years old, it must carry an age statement. If it is 4 years old or older, it does not have to carry an age statement. It can, but there's no requirement. Now, Knob Creek 9-year does have the age statement. There for a while, the demand was so high that Jim Beam was having to dump barrels younger than 9 years in order to meet the demand and maintain the flavor profile. And so they took the age statement off. They did not lower it because their goal was 9 years. But they couldn't promise it. They couldn't be certain of it, so they took the age statement off. And once they were able to ramp up production to meet the demand, then they put the age statement back on. But because it is at least 4 years old, 9 is at least 4, right? Why don't I wave my hand right where you can't see my face, like John Cena? I am nowhere near in as good a shape as John Cena. He could pick me up with one finger. I couldn't lift him with 2 crowbars and a crane. Just spicy enough, just dark enough in its profile. I love Knob Creek 9. If this was the only whiskey I could drink the rest of my life, it wouldn't hurt my feelings none. So Has to follow all the other rules, in this case of bourbon. To have the state on the label, it has to be made, aged, and bottled in that state. Has to be at least 2 years old. If it's under 4 years, it has to have an age statement. If it's older than 4, it doesn't. And it cannot contain any artificial color or flavor. The only permissible additive is pure water to bring it down to bottling proof. Now this is 100 proof. Or as these modern people who learned their terminology after I did would call it, it is 50% alcohol by volume. Everybody says ABV. Well, if you're a beginner to whiskey, what is ABV? Alcohol by volume. That means that of the whiskey that's in here, half of it, if you could separate it out, about that much would be alcohol and the rest would be water, various other chemicals, that sort of thing. Now, if you find a barrel that on its own is right at 100 proof, it's going to be highly unusual. Checking the time, just about 17 minutes. I try to keep them short, I fail. As ex-PFC Wintergreen would say, my prose is too prolix. So you want to bottle it at 100 proof. So they allow you to add sufficient pure water to bring it down to that bottling proof. You cannot artificially color it. You cannot artificially flavor it. And that's one of the reasons I'm a little leery of foreign whiskeys, because I don't know about all countries, but some countries allow the addition of caramel coloring. They allow the addition of artificial flavors. And I'm not talking about a flavored whiskey like, for instance, Crown Blackberry. You know, there is a maple flavored Knob Creek. We're talking about straight whiskey. In order to be straight whiskey, the only additive you can put in is pure water to bring it down to bottling proof. Little smokiness, little woodiness, and on the finish there's red pepper. It's concentrated on the front of my tongue, but there's a strip running back. Getting some honey, some cinnamon, some caramel. By talking so much, I disrupted the finish. The air kept moving everything around, and so it didn't really set in. It is amazing the relationship between smell and taste. And I'd noticed this years ago. If you have a cold, you don't taste things as well because you don't smell things as well. That clogged up nose makes things taste bland. Taste and smell go together. That's why we not only nose the whiskey, we not only taste the whiskey, brown sugar on the finish that time, red and black pepper both. We don't just do the one or the other, but we nose and taste, and then we look at the finish too, because the smell and taste go together. So I can't remember where I was. Let me just recap what it takes to make straight whiskey. Made, aged, and bottled in the state, or you can't put the state on there. At least 2 years old. If it's under 4, it must have an age statement. Over 4, age statement is optional. No artificial color, no artificial flavor. That's true for bourbon, it's for corn whiskey, for rye whiskey, for any whiskey you make in this country. If you want to put straight whiskey on the label, you have to comply with those rules. So, that goes out of the way. I pick my glass up. When I was first starting this channel, I never knew how to end a video. Finally, I figured it out. I can toast you. You are my viewers. As Casey Allen of Beautiful Bourbon says, you could be doing anything else, and yet you're watching this video. I thank you. All 57 subscribers to the channel. Anybody else who's not subscribed, I appreciate you watching, especially since my thoroughly amateur setup does not lend itself to a great deal of admiration. Thank you. Here's how.